Okay, good morning, everyone. Today, we will be covering the topic of Google Analytics, which is essentially looking at traffic that comes to a website, figuring out what they're doing, and trying to make money off that. So that's what all that is about. This is our web. So what we'll cover, we'll see how far we get today. We'll do the overview of what web analytics is, some basic terms and definitions, talk about the various flavors of Google Analytics, and somewhere in there is about where we'll wind things down. Okay. So first start off, what's the whole point of business websites? Well, I imagine most of you don't really recall a time when websites weren't out there. But for those of us that are a little bit older, you can remember back to the mid-90s when most businesses did not have websites and virtually no business was conducted over the internet. So it was a very different time, right? If you wanted to go out and buy a book, for example, you didn't just go to Amazon, do a quick search on the site and try to find, some book that you were looking for. Instead, God help you, you had to physically get in a car and go downtown to a bookstore and look around through the shelves to try to find something. And if it wasn't there, you had to talk to a human and ask them to order it to you. It was crazy. There's no way to live. So websites have in many ways made life a lot better, a lot easier to buy the things we want. So key things that business websites do. Number one, automate routine business activities. So for example, back in the day, a lot of people ordered stuff through catalogs. I mean, it still happens sometimes, but back in the day, that was the internet. So if you here, for example, you get the Sears catalog or the J.C. Penney catalog, that all sorts of stuff. Everything from appliances to clothes to board games, whatever you wanted to buy, you'd get on the phone and tell somebody what you wanted to buy, and then give them your credit card number and your address, and they would send the stuff out to you. But all that meant that you had to have call centers staffed with humans to wait for the calls. Yeah. But with websites, you no longer need that, right? You build some software that does all of those same activities. Even things that are equivalent to page flipping, right? So routine activities in a catalog, flipping through the pages, trying to find what you're looking for. Now you have a search function on websites that, number one, is a lot faster. Number two, is usually a lot more accurate. Okay, other stuff, enabling transactions, right? You don't have to actually call somebody. The transaction mechanism is right there on the website. It's a way for customers to learn about products, and it's a way for businesses to learn about their actual. So actual customers are, of course, people that have bought something from the site. Potential customers is everybody else, right? Pretty much everybody else in the whole world is a potential customer for a website. What else? Customer experience is better. Most people don't really like to go out and shop. I mean, my wife may be an exception there, but a lot of people, would rather just get the stuff without going out and taking the time to buy it. So websites are great. You don't have to travel to the store. They're available 24 hours a day. So if you have some off hours, you have to work late, instead of being in a rush to get out to the store at the end of the day, you can just say, forget about it. I'll go, to the website at midnight or whatever. You can search through the website, which is great. And it's much easier to do price comparisons. So this is a big macroeconomic benefit. So back in the day, again, if you wanted to compare prices across stores, right? If you found several stores that have this product, and of those that do, if you wanted to find out who they were, right, and what they were selling the product for, you'd have to actually get on the phone, call them up, wait for somebody to answer the phone, say, hey, can you do a price check on such and such for me? And then they'll say, yeah, sure, in a couple minutes. And maybe they wander off and eventually come back with the price for you and let you know. And then you got to repeat that for 3 or 5 stores, right? So you're not going to compare many stores. But on the internet, it's a matter of seconds, right? You say, here's what Amazon's selling it for. Here's what Target's selling it for. Here's what Walmart's selling it for, whatever. The price comparisons are much, much easier. Even on Amazon, if they have many sellers selling the same product, it's quick to compare across those because you can just do a rank by price, for example. And last, websites, very important source of information for business. So one thing businesses can use with the website is get a lot of different information that would be normally unavailable in stores. Let me give some examples. So I'm gonna drop into Paint here. Okay. Things that businesses would like to learn, but in practice can't. Okay. What are some things that businesses would like to know? Well, for example, everyone who visits the store, right? You can't do that in a physical store. It would be, I mean, you could, but it's not feasible, right? So not feasible due to creepiness, right? People think, oh man, that business is watching me and they're looking at my face and they recognize who I am and they saw I came in here, right? People aren't going to like that. So they can't see everyone who visits the store. Number two, they can't see what motivated people to visit the store, right? In particular, which advertisements, okay? They don't know, but with web analytics, you can see that you sent somebody an email, they responded to that email, came to your website, right? So you can very clearly see the connection. Also, on the topic of what motivated people, right? What motivated people, which ad on which platform or other site. Okay, there are many different advertisement mechanisms. For example, you could advertise on Facebook, you could advertise through direct email, you could do banner ads on sites, whatever. You could advertise along with Google search results. So which of those ads are working better and at what time of day? Okay, these are things you can see. What else? Big thing you can't see in stores, customer paths through the store, right? I mean, you could get an idea of how traffic flows through the store, sure, but you can't see how particular customers drift around. And in particular, any items that aren't bought, even if the customer looks at them. Okay, so that's something, or adds them to the cart. That's some stuff that you can't practically get in physical stores. So what we're trying to do here, in most cases for web analytics, this is our single slide summary, right? This is what happens. Ads typically are how customers get to the store, the visit, something happens there, and then the outcome. Outcome. And in all cases, right, this is what drift. Ads bring traffic to the website, visits lead to some outcomes, either somebody buys or does not buy. And what the business tries to do, essentially, figure out which ads lead to more visits and better outcomes, right? So more purchases, higher purchase probability, I'll leave that. More dollar sales and more repeat traffic over time, okay? These are all the things that businesses are concerned about. And web analytics lets you track this. I hope that makes sense. So this is our quick intro to the topic. Okay, moving on. So fundamentally, what web analytics is studying patterns in your web traffic. Things like who's visiting your site, where are these people coming from, what are they doing? Web analytics you can measure on every page of a site and at every stage of a purchase process. So understanding what happens on a page is pretty simple, but even if you're doing Ajax-based things that only update part of a page, for example, the customer sees their basket, they say, okay, I'm ready to check out. That checkout option refreshes part of the page where they can enter their credit card information, and clicking on that proceeds to a next page where they can select their shipping options, right? But all that could still be on the same page. So every part of a purchase process, you could have multiple stages still on the same URL. The goal is you try to figure out customer demographics, for example, what zip code they're from, to the extent that you have the information, things like gender and age and income. Those are all things you might include. But all those behaviors, that's all the stuff that people do on the website. So all the information you have about your customers, you connect that with their behaviors, and you can learn things like how well your website is doing. For example, are web sales getting better? Are they getting worse? Are you more successful generally with your ad campaigns over time? Identifying opportunities and shortfalls. For example, are you spending a lot of money going after a customer segment that is not particularly valuable? For example, you might say, well, our brand is targeted at, say, women in the 25 to 44-year-old bracket. Sure, that's great. You go after them. But it might be that you're spending too much money on them, right? You're advertising on a platform that, even though it has a lot of that demographic, people that see your ads, they come to your site and they're mostly not buying. There might be other website advertising options that are doing better for you. And last, devising and refining business strategies, right? So all this information about how your website is doing, how sales are doing, which advertising campaigns are working better or worse, that's all the sort of stuff you can do to implement strategy as far as, number one, figuring out which options are feasible, right? For example, is it feasible to increase your website sales by 10% by spending X dollars in advertising, right? Is that a possibility for the next year or two? And also refining your business strategies. So if you identify that your website is working very well and your advertising is going well, well, that's one extra option you have. If you identify that your advertising is not going so well, well, then fixing that advertising problem might be one of the things at the top of your list. Okay. So why is web analytics important? Well, businesses these days, they need to be online to get much in the way of customers, right? There are very few businesses these days of any scale that operate solely on word of mouth or without any kind of online option, without any kind of online presence, right? They'll advertise with Google, they'll advertise on Facebook, they'll advertise on other places, but you need something somewhere, because otherwise your business is probably just going to get lost in the noise. Now, all that stuff is expensive, right? Just to give you an idea of how much shit costs out there, let's take an example. What do you think might be some of the most expensive categories of online advertisements? What do you think? Talk to me. What's expensive in online advertising? And then I'll show you what actually is. So,
is to get the customer attraction on the platform.
What are some attributes of a product that would tend to make the sellers willing to pay more for clicks on the ads?
Some like provocative ad which says like click on me or something like that.
Yeah, we got a fish has bit. Okay, let's see what we got here. Moving graphics. Oh, no, I didn't mean the kind of ad. That's true. Video ads do generally cost more than static images or just words. That's true because they require more data. But what about the product that you're offering? Okay, what kind of products would be expensive? What do you think? What in general?
Cars, maybe cars.
Or what vacations? That's good. Good. Be the attributes of those products. Now, vacations is actually a really good idea, or travel generally. Okay, so travel, including vacations. Cars, sure, cars. Okay, what else? What do these things have in common? I'll add a big one. Houses, yeah, real estate, houses and other real estate. The big thing that these have in common, they're expensive products, right? That people typically, typing is hard, typically look for when they're serious about buying. Okay, there's a couple more. There's three more that would really round out the good options in the list. Other stuff, so what's expensive that when you're looking for it, you're buying it? Brands. Well, brands of what? I mean, yeah, any product has a range of like expensive brands and cheap brands. Sure, but that's not a product category. I mean, yeah, it's designer stuff. Sure. I mean, you want to talk about something, wedding rings, right? You shop around for that maybe, depending. But I'll give you a few. So number one, tuition assistance and, college loans. That's a big thing because people aren't going to look for that unless they're fairly serious, right? Number two, medical care, right? Which is obviously often quite expensive, but people look for it when they need it, that's for sure. What else? Legal help, right? If you are accused of some terrible crime and you need legal assistance, well, you're going to buy something. Yeah, colleges in general, sure, right? Better Call Saul, exactly. And the last one, this is the one that's the big thing. Insurance, right? Ugh. Especially life insurance. Okay, life insurance is the sort of product that, you can drift through your life until you're like 25, 35, 45. Yeah, HVAC, yeah, various housing maintenance things, sure. You can drift through life thinking, yeah, I don't need any insurance. And then one day, boom, you're married and you got a few kids and you're like, holy shit, I'm making money. And if something happens to this income stream, it's going to be real bad. So you buy some life insurance and you want to get it done right away. So life insurance is that kind of thing that very few people bother looking at just recreationally. They really only buy it. They only look for it when it's time for them to buy it. And when they do buy it, they're typically in there for a long time, probably at least 10 years, maybe something more like 20 or 30 or 50 years. So it's a very expensive product once they buy it. So life insurance companies are quite often willing to pay around $100 or so per click, right? Sometimes the numbers do get that high depending on the platform, right? How well it is targeting the customers. So these are the kind of products that, again, businesses are paying a lot per click, because if the life insurance people know, hey, these customers, they're only looking at like 3 or 5 different life insurance companies at most. They're definitely going to buy from one of them. That $100 per click starts looking like pretty good odds. Okay. So this is a quick side note there. So when I say this, right, analytics supports better decisions about how to spend limited funds wisely. So the life insurance advertisers, for example, as long as they're doing a good job of targeting their ads to be shown just to people that are interested in life insurance. For example, if they're showing the ads along with a Google search for how can I buy life insurance, right? Then yeah, that's probably a good search to show along your ads that get $100 a click for. But if you're just showing life insurance as a random banner ad on some website, yeah, it's going to be kind of garbagey, right? You're going to have a low probability that a random person visiting that website is going to be interested in life insurance. And chances are most of the clicks you'll get on that will just be accidental. And so you'll be really throwing away quite a bit of money. So businesses need to know which websites, which platforms ultimately lead to purchases. And according to that, they can figure out what the appropriate ad rates are. So if they're running an ad on a website that has, a 1 in 10 chance of getting a purchase, and the business knows that, they would make $1,000 off of this purchase, then they might be willing to pay something, probably not quite 100, because, that's eating away all their profit, but, $20 or $50 would not be unreasonable. Okay, so again, ad rates, how much to pay for click, that sort of thing. And more generally, businesses can use this information to estimate how well any marketing campaign is going. So estimating its value. So you see, well, the one problem is there are a lot of products where people don't buy that same day, right? So life insurance, for example, even though there's some good money involved in it, customers are typically buying life insurance like tipping over a vending machine, right? They got to rock it back and forth a few times before they figure out which product they're actually going to buy. They're not just going to randomly see the product, click on it, and buy it and be done in like half an hour. I mean, if you've ever gone shopping for life insurance, you know that the companies generally want to do some kind of physical examination on you to make sure that, you know, you're not at death's door. Anyway, so this is the idea, though, that businesses can say, oh, well, we're running these ads, and in the past, when we've gotten X clicks, it's led to Y dollars, and now we're getting 2X clicks, and so we think we're getting something around the order of 2Y dollars, and that's good. Okay, so web analytics basically lets businesses assess how well their online advertising is going. They need online advertising, so they need to find some way to assess how well it's going. Okay. Now, there's two basic flavors of web analytics, on-site and off-site. We'll be much more concerned with what's called on-site advertising. So on-site, as you might guess, tracks all the stuff that's going on your site. So for example, visitor sessions. People come to your website, they do some stuff, they go away. That's a session, okay? So anything a visitor does while they're on your website, yeah, you get that. Number two, typically you get traffic sources. So for example, if people are visiting you from another site, or if they're visiting you from the ads you send them in email, or if they're visiting you from banner ads or Google ads, whatever, you can figure out your different traffic streams, where they're coming from. And you want to separate them so that you know which platforms are more successful for you. Goal conversions. So on any website, there's a bunch of stuff you might want them to do. Some of it's obvious, like sales, right? You want customers to come to your website and buy stuff. But again, because a lot of transactions aren't immediate, right? Customers shop around for a while, they look at stuff, maybe they come back in a few weeks or months or even years. Yeah, you want to have other things besides just sales. So for example, you might track if somebody looks at a different product page, you know, they have like a 1% chance of buying that product down the road. Or if they click on some images on the product, or if they spend extra time on that product page looking at it, they have a higher percentage chance of buying it. So you track all those kind of activities. Once you have the data to show that, you know, people that do these behaviors are more likely to actually come back at some point down the road and buy the stuff. In my own case, actually, this came up in real life. So my son is going to be General Grievous for Halloween. Remember the Star Wars like cyborg robot guy that has like 4 lightsabers? Anyway, so that's what he wants to be. So I had to go over to Amazon and buy a couple of commercial grade lightsabers over there. And the thing was, I'd been aware of this stuff since he was real little, since he was like 2 or 3. And was first interested in Star Wars, and I thought about getting him one of these fancy lightsabers, but you know, I never got around to it until now. So here I am coming back like 5 years later with some knowledge of the product. And even though I've, you know, occasionally glanced at these websites, like every year or two, I say, oh, is this the year I buy one? I haven't, but then this year I did. So customers sometimes take a long time to buy stuff. Anyway, in general, on-site tools track what's going on at your site, not what's going on at anybody else's site. Off-site tools, on the other hand, check broader market information, right? So things like comparisons across competitors, like within a category of website, who's getting the traffic, who isn't. For example, is Twitter getting more more visitors or more income, or are you getting, I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Different comparisons across competitors. Potential audience, right? So for any particular set of search terms, for example, some search terms are popular, some search terms aren't. For example, if you do a search for women's shoes, that is probably going to be a reasonably popular search. If you do a search for something very focused, like, I don't know, red blankets and matching pillows, that's probably not going to be a terribly common search. So much lower audience. In general, the more specific a product search is, the lower the audience is going to be, but you can benefit by targeting your products, you know, more precisely. Buzz, that's just trends over time. For example, some products will suddenly get a lot of popularity and just as quickly go away. And last, what's going on in the overall market? So overall search traffic levels, prevailing advertising rates, things like that. So on-site tools track the stuff that's going on your website. Off-site tools track, in general, what's going on in the broader universe outside your site. Okay. So next question, what can web analytics do? Well, the big thing is it gathers customer data. By customers, we just mean all the people visiting your site. So site visitor data would also work there. This is often in an aggregate form, so visitors from a different region. For example, if you're a store that only has one physical location in Chicago, you're probably very interested in Chicagoland internet users that visit your website. Other things like what channel, so that's the mechanism that people use to get to your website. So things like ad campaign number 1, ad campaign number 2, whatever, people linking from Facebook, people linking from partner sites, whatever, all those aggregates. And time intervals. So at different times of day, you might get better results. For example, if you're a business-to-business site, you are probably going to have more success advertising during daytime working hours than you would advertising, between midnight and 8 in the morning. In many cases, it's possible to get data on individual site users, though as we'll eventually talk, it's not always a good idea because of privacy concerns. And there are a lot of different web analytics software tools out there, and they're all going to have a different focus. So Google Analytics is basically all about these aggregates. It's not really suitable for looking at individual customers in detail. Other software, yeah, many of those are. Many of those are geared entirely towards looking at really strong customer relationship management. So you figure out individual customers, exactly what you want, exactly what they're looking for, and you can customize a lot of stuff for them over time. Other stuff that web analytics does can quickly identify site errors. For example, if you know that you're getting a fair amount of traffic on a web page, but it's not showing up in your analytics, right? You could say, oh, maybe there's some problem with this particular web page. Maybe it's configured wrong, and we can recognize that because, whatever feature we think should be getting a lot of interactions, it's not getting any interactions. Number 3, measure results of system changes and alternatives, right? This is something called A/B testing, widely used in web analytics. Any feature you have on the site, you make up a slightly different copy of it. So you change some feature. For example, you have a background color as blue instead of orange, right? And you run 2 versions of the site and you see which one does better. If there's no material difference, well, then you've identified that it isn't. But in many cases, visitors will have a preference for one over the other. Even things like the sequence of images that you use to advertise a product on the product page, some visitors might prefer one sequence to another. So you can do all that. You can do A/B testing to figure out which flavor of a site customers like better. And there are some cautions on that. So caveats, warnings, limitations, that sort of thing. Number 1, the data is often ambiguous. In real life, you might be looking at, say, 7 different, here's 7 different features on your site, and you'll find 4 of them point in a good direction and 3 of them point in the bad direction. And you've got to figure out some narrative that makes it all make sense. For example, some of these some of these possibilities are cannibalizing other ones. For example, if you do something on your website that's encouraging people to visit more often, chances are the amount of money they're going to spend per visit is going to decline. Likewise, if they're visiting more often, the probability of actually making a purchase is probably going to decline. Okay, so that's what we mean by ambiguity. You're not going to typically see all of your arrows pointing in a slam dunk direction that everything's getting better at the same time. And an important thing, web analytics technology can't really interpret the data for you, right? Maybe in your lifetime it will, but for now you need that human understanding of the business and understanding of the customers to be able to come up with some plausible explanation of why things are the way they are. Because again, you'll often get good signals and bad signals mixed together, and you have to, figure out the meaning behind all that. So that's the human factor. Okay. So learning about customers, right? There's a lot of useful groupings depending on your product. Some might be more useful than others. So again, demographics, location, channel. Product preferences, right? You can group it by people who looked at this part of the website. For example, on Amazon, you might be interested particularly in customers who looked at music downloads, or Amazon Prime customers, whatever, some subset of your customers based on the products they buy. And then, of course, online activity, right? You can look at their search patterns, what they're searching for on your site, how they're searching to get to your site if you're advertising through Google or another search engine. Visitor paths and exits, right? Which products they're looking at, how they're getting them, at what point in the process are they leaving. And then last, what site content they're actually viewing, what set of products is being looked at. So all of this information, we'll have a little bit more to say about this as we go forward. All of this information basically gets tied together to estimate the value of individual user actions. So again, dropping back to Paint, all this stuff here, right? Customers get to your site by some mechanism. While they're on your site, they do some stuff. Then they have a variety of good or bad outcomes, okay? That's what we're tracking. So all of this stuff, all these transaction histories, we're going to use that to estimate the value of the user actions, right? So for example, if a site identifies that an ad click costs, what's a good number to put on that? Let's say it costs $50, but that customer is, right, what shall we say, 80% likely to view a product that has, I don't know, a value, let's say $1,000, and half of those views will buy it in the next month. Okay, then we can crunch that number, right? We can crunch that number and say, this particular ad on this particular site, right, wherever we're running it, this is good. So 80% of $1,000, 80% of $1,000 is $800. Half of those views, $400. We're getting $400 of value on average for every $50 click. So that ad, at least, is great, right? There's going to be other ads out there that aren't so good. But if you can look at your whole basket of activities and at least recognize that you're making money off of that, then that's great. Okay. Identifying problems, again, bad links between pages, inaccessible pages. Those are obvious things that you want to recognize. Other stuff that's more subtle. For example, imagine if you have videos on your page and you think, hey, it'd be a great idea to advertise our products with videos. Customers like videos, they see how they work. But when you actually crunch the numbers, you see that practically nobody even looks at the videos. You find that like 5 or 10 customers are looking at the videos. Or you find that a lot of people are looking at the videos, but the people who do look at them are actually substantially less likely to buy your product. Then maybe you don't want to go to that much trouble to include them. Okay, so, or another thing, things like how many images are worth including of a product. So, for example, you might say to yourself, well, we want to give customers every possible angle to look at our product so they can see what it's like, so they feel happy about it. You say throw 30 images on there, right? But those 30 images means it's going to take longer for the page to load, and you might identify that the customers almost never look at all 30 of them, right? They might look at the top 5 or so. So you say, yeah, what's the point of including those 30 images? It makes our pages load slow and nobody even looks at them. Let's get rid of that. Other stuff, the product pricing, sticker shock is a big thing. It was a much bigger thing back in the 90s, but it's still not a trivial thing today. So sticker shock is basically you look at a product, you're like, holy shit, that's expensive. I didn't expect it to be that much. And then you drop out. So in the old days, what would happen is that you'd go through to a website, you'd add a whole bunch of products to your cart, and you'd look at it and say, wow, the prices on this are great. Internet shopping is wonderful. And then at the end, you get to it and you have this basket of goods and like the shipping cost on it is like $60. And you're like, what? $60 for shipping? I could go out to the store next door and buy all this stuff, you know, for less than $60. Forget this. So that sort of thing was an issue. Now, of course, Amazon has largely gotten around that by this Prime membership option so that shipping is free, so it eliminates that problem. Other places, they'll build the shipping cost into it. This is why so much online these days you see free shipping as an automatic option, because the sticker shock is a real thing. People thought they were getting a good deal, and then when they see what the shipping cost is, then they suddenly realize, oh, it's not a good deal. About 10 years ago, there was a time I was looking around on eBay a lot for Persian rugs, right? Oriental rugs, they call them too. Anyway, yeah. So on eBay, they would have this thing where they would have the rug listings at like a penny each. And at first I was like, wow, penny each, that's a very generous starting bid. Let's check this out. But then you look at the ad and you see, oh, but the shipping cost is $299. So they're getting their money one way or the other. Now these days they've all shifted it so they found out that strategy didn't really work. So these days they're again building the shipping cost into the price model. The other thing, of course, insufficient information. If there's not enough information about the product, people would like to know more stuff. For example, maybe a lot of people are clicking on everything and not buying. Maybe it's because they're really interested in having more information, but they don't find that there. One thing you might do to test that out is do some A/B testing, right? Include a little bit more information about the product in an alternate version of the web page, see if that helps boost sales. So all these kind of problems, you can try out different stuff, see what works, see what doesn't. Okay. There we go. And last, you can measure results. So any kind of marketing effort you're doing, whether it's short term, for example, if you're running ads online, for example, you got a Super Bowl ad, you can see what the impact of that Super Bowl ad is. What makes this difficult, right, for offline is here's what'll happen. What'll happen in the offline world, let's draw a graph here. So let's say you run your advertisement here, okay, for one day. In the offline world, what'll happen, your sales are kind of like this, and then you'll see some weird peak, right, in the few days afterwards, and then it'll taper off over time. Okay, and there's always a question, given the variety of advertising and seasonal factors that might be relevant, how much impact does the big ad have? Or how much of the bump in sales does it create? Okay, and it's hard to know. You can make some best guesses about it, but it's hard to know. On the other hand, if you're doing this online, right, and you're grabbing this, here's your sales, right, we'll do a similar thing here. And if your sales look something like this, like in terms of site traffic, maybe your sales, still look the same, but what you see in terms of site traffic, boom, 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 it's much sharper. This here, right, let's that part definitely attributable to the ad, right? And you can run your analytics on that, run analytics on it to, again, determine what sales impact that extra site traffic has. So again, it's not going to answer all your questions. There's still going to be some of these same variability issues with other advertising, seasonal factors, whatever, but you'll have more information and a better guess at the ad's outcomes. Okay, not going to answer all your questions, but you will have more information. You'll be able to have better understanding of how valuable this ad is. Okay. Other stuff, long-term, right? Partnerships with other businesses, other channels, advertising mechanisms, things like that. Yeah, online advertising, you can use analytics to basically trend this. And again, you'll just have more information. For example, if you were running a long series of TV ads and billboard ads and radio ads, you'd have to figure out separately the impact of all of those, and there'd be a lot of guesswork involved, right? But if you're advertising on a lot of different platforms, you tend to be able to see much better that people are seeing ads on one platform, coming to your site and buying stuff. You'll be able to get a much better idea of how successful the individual channels are. Other things, changes in the site design or product presentation, right? Again, all this sort of A/B testing, if you're showing different photos for your product, right? A different mix of photos, if you're including different links on the landing page. For example, you go to Amazon, it'll show you a whole bunch of reasonably popular products. You go to eBay, it'll do the same kind of thing. Even if you're doing a non-retail site, right? If you're doing a media site with news articles, you put the news articles on your site and you see what people are more interested in, and you prioritize showing those so you get the most traffic, right? And any sort of localized content, right? Stuff that's specific for a particular market. So the people that your Chicago visitors are interested in Chicago, for example, in November, October, they might be interested in winter gear, whereas people in California, yeah, probably not so much, right? So you don't necessarily want to show the same mix of products to people all around the country. Another thing, differential pricing. So this is a special case of A/B testing, and it's worth taking a couple minutes to explain. So, way back when, for Amazon, way back when, in the circa 2000, Amazon decided it wanted more information about demand curves, right? Basically, what price corresponded to what sales, okay? Because we know from our basic microeconomics, right? We know the basic chart. Sorry, this thing always gets in the way. We know that we have a couple curves, right? They're going to look something like that. Whoop. I'm just going to do straight lines, it's fine. And we'll do a green one over here. So if this, right, so what goes up with up? We have price and we have quantity, right? So as the price goes up, the quantity demanded goes down. So this green is the seller price, right? So as the seller price goes up, quantity offered also tends to go up, right? If the seller says, hey, I can make more money per product, I'm going to try to sell more. On the other hand, as the price for the buyer, right, as that goes up, the quantity bought will go down, right? We understand this, basic supply and demand. So what Amazon wanted to do is figure out, get more data points along this curve, right, at a different point in time. So Amazon decided to do A/B testing for particular products based on their price alone, right? So same page, just a different random price. They wanted to get this kind of information so that they could optimize their pricing. Yeah. Anyway, the world had a giant fit about this. The world was quite unhappy, even though price discrimination like this happens all the time, right? It does. For example, senior discounts for almost everything, student discounts for a lot of stuff, right? Tuition, in-state versus elsewhere, right? All these are things that people see and they don't have a big freak out about. But with Amazon, people said, hey, this is bogus. You can't be charging people different prices for the same thing based on nothing. even though, I'm going to add this, even though if Amazon had randomly offered a discount coupon, which has the same, ultimate effect, no one would be too upset, right? Because people go to websites all the time and they say, oh, click here for your free random offer if you buy something, and you click it and some people get 10% off, some people get 20% off, whatever. Anyway, it's a strange world we live in, but people had the idea that, oh, because one customer's price was visibly higher than another, they were going to have a freak out about it. So the end result, Amazon said, okay, we won't do that again on the same day, right? They're still going to charge different prices for something, but they're going to have short-term fluctuations from like 1 week or 1 month to the next, but they're not going to randomly mix up prices on the same day. And we'll refund any difference, right? So any people who bought the same product for more, they'll give them the same price that the other people got. Anyway, which goes into a strange, strange file of things. Number one, right down here, perceptions matter, even if they're not the same as reality. And number two, right, a golden rule of life, I would say, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should, right? We all have surely seen this in our personal lives at various times. Okay, so that's the takeaway from all that. All right, other stuff, web analytics versus surveys. So a lot of websites, when you go visit them, they'll ask you to do some little survey afterwards, telling them what you thought of their website, that sort of thing. Usually people blow it off, right? Most of the time people say, no, I don't have time for that. I don't even care if it's like a 3-question survey, just not interested. If you want longer surveys, right, with more detailed information, you're going to have to pay for that. For example, over the summer, one of the things I started doing, I started contracting out with McGraw-Hill, the textbook company, first of all, to review some of their textbook content, and then second, to start writing some of it for them. I'm doing scripts for videos in some of my off hours. But all that stuff is expensive, right? In general, the rates I was getting was about $100 an hour. They'd send me a few textbook chapters. I'd make some comments on it, tell them what I thought. Later on, I'd go join some focus groups and we'd all talk about things. So, the floor on that I was participating in was something like $100 an hour. So again, surveys are expensive. This stuff doesn't come cheap, and especially if the quality of data you want is going to be good. If they just push this out to a bunch of random clowns on the internet, the quality of the responses they're going to get is not going to be very good. But if they get a bunch of, fairly serious professionals to look at it and do a good job, then yeah, it'll be better, but it's going to cost more. Anyway, so on websites, what you'll see, if they try to get more detailed surveys, right, if they have like a 25 or 30 question, something jumped there, if they try to get a 35 question survey, they're not going to get many takers on that, especially if the going rate is not very high. Number two, not necessarily representative samples. So depending on what the company is willing to pay, if they're offering, something along the lines of like $10 an hour to do this work, yeah, the people that they're going to get included in that are going to be people that are willing to give away their time for $10 an hour. So you'll get a lot of students, a lot of chronic unemployed, a lot of bored housewives, a lot of senior citizens, people with, that tend to have free time, not people that might be who the company is actually looking for. And in particular, may exclude the most profitable customers. So people that have more money generally tend to spend more money. So in order to get responses from those customers, you're going to have to pay them a corresponding rate, right? Something that lines up more or less with the perceived value of their time. Anyway, but ideally, web analytics can help you learn about how the site is doing without paying anything extra, right? You can see what people do, you can measure what works and what doesn't, and you don't have to pay people up front to tell you how it works. You can just see, oh, I know that this particular presentation of this product is getting more sales. It must be a better way to show it. So what you want to do in practice is structure your research efforts by cost, right? So analytics gives you all this information that's actually free. Google Analytics is a free tool. So use that as much as you can wherever it's appropriate. But surveys could provide some additional depth. For example, your analytics could tell you whether one product page design is better than another, but you might do a survey here or there to ask customers, hey, what's some stuff that's not included on this page that you might like to see? For example, what's missing, right? And you're not going to get that in an A/B testing type situation. Okay. Now, a little bit of the technical details. So where does web analytics data come from? Well, whenever a visitor goes to your web page, that's going to generate a call to a web server, right? So the visitor shows up, he says, hey, web server, send me the page. The web server sends the page out. In the back end of things, that page is probably going to be constructed by pulling a bunch of data from a bunch of different sources. For example, links, product images, any personalized information for you. For example, if they know you're in Chicago, you get Chicago-specific stuff. Okay, and all of that action, all of that interactions with the various servers in the back end, that leaves a trail. So a trail of interactions. This page was called. This content was called. Everything like that, that record of server calls, that's where the web analytics data comes from. And once the user has the page, you can run client-side scripts like JavaScript to track the individual user actions. Those are called events. So for example, clicks on images or links, anytime that happens, you click on an image, you call the server, say, hey server, send me this image in a blowed up, in a bigger form. Yeah, that's gonna leave a record on the server. Anytime you link to a different page on the website, that's going to leave a record on the server. Okay, so all these tracked events, they have scripts embedded in the HTML to notify the site owner or some third-party analytics, right? Because you can do it two different ways. You can track it on your own site, or you can outsource that to Google Analytics. But basically, everything you do on a website, it's going to leave some record on the servers that a particular batch of data was called for. And typically you can bundle that together into a session for a particular user, organize it that way. Okay, so there's two basic methods for doing this web analytics stuff. Number one is the server log model. That's where all the data is tracked on the server side. So everything that happens, every visitor that comes to the site, everything they click on, right, that all gets recorded and gets stored locally, right, at the organization servers in one very big log file, right? So if you have a busy site, you're going to get gigs and gigs of data every day. So there's that. The other one is the page tag model. Page tag is a client-side model. So essentially what that means, every time somebody visits a page or clicks something on your website, there's a script running on the page that sends that information of what the user did to some other source, for example, to Google for their Google Analytics system. So all that data, you're not keeping it on your own servers, you're outsourcing it somewhere else. And these two models, they do have pros and cons, so let's talk. So with server logs, the pro of that is it automatically collects everything. Anything that happens that generates a server call, it is going to be recorded. You don't have to worry about if there are any flaws in your tracking code. Everything's going to get captured. In a way, that's also a downside, right? Because you got to do some kind of filtering. So if you want to actually analyze this data, it's one thing to have it all stored, right? You have these gigantic log files built up every day of everything that people have done. But if you want to actually look at that information and do it in a reasonably quick time, you basically have to build a whole separate system of your own to do it. So there's some kind of filtering required. Chances are you got to build your own system to do it. If this is not, if you're not a very data-centric company, this might be a difficult task to do. And last, data tends to become available in batches, right? So you'll gather your logs at the end of the day, or maybe at like 8-hour shifts, whatever. And at that point, you'll take this data and group it into some usable format. But you're not going to get immediately usable information throughout the day. Again, unless you develop a specialized custom system to do that. Page tags, on the other hand, nice thing about page tags, you can gather data in practically real time. Number two, it's much easier to learn user activities in detail. All these features of what people are doing, they're built into the software. Again, for Google Analytics, a lot of this stuff is already built in. It's just there for you to show up and use. All you have to do is enter in the correct tracking code and event tracking code on your web page. It's typically implemented as software as a service, that kind of cloud model, and it outsources all the data management to some other organization. So again, if you're doing it with Google Analytics, it's potentially free. If you're doing it with some other operation, maybe it's not free, but it's going to be a lot cheaper than building up your own system. The downside, number one, users have to have JavaScript enabled, users have to accept cookies, right? So if either one of those is missing, then you're not going to be able to track their data. And if users are frequently clearing or otherwise refreshing their cookies, then again, that's going to degrade the quality of your information. You're going to think you have multiple users when you really only had one. Other things, your tracking code has to be correct. If anything is specified incorrectly, you're not going to grab data for that. So let me give you an example, because we'll talk. I just want to show you a little bit of what Google Analytics looks like. So here's my page again, my Doug Court page. I got it here. I've been doing a little bit of stuff with the so I've implemented some sound, for example. Can you hear that? I don't know. Oh, you can't hear that. Now you can hear that. I can hear it. Okay. Anyway. So this is what we have. So I came to the website, some stuff happened, whatever. Don't really care. That's Slugfall. But if I go to Google Analytics, oh, that was the alarm. If I go to Analytics here, Google Analytics is right there. I can log straight in. It can show me how many users are active on my page right now. Right? So for example, if I go to real time, I go to overview, it'll show how many people are on my website right now. Here I am, I'm one. And what am I doing? I have some events going on, somebody's viewed a page. Yeah, and I can see where the people are from. So all this information, right? I mean, obviously Doug Corp is a fake site and it doesn't really do anything, but if you wanted to look at a half-hour window of real-time information, you could absolutely do that. Okay, no more slugs. Okay, so anyway, that's what we can do. In the page tag model, which is what Google Analytics uses, I can get that kind of real-time information right away. So if I change some feature on the page, I can very quickly see how it's working in real time. Can't do that with server logs in practice. Okay. Other stuff, we'll go through some of the basics. We'll get through some of the terms and definitions. If you're interested, I have, a link to more, excuse me, these are the big ones though. Okay, visitors and visits. So a visitor, someone who visits your site. Okay, anybody that visits your site is a visitor, go figure. Now, a new visitor is somebody who's visiting your site for the first time, as far as your software knows. That's why I say maybe. A returning visitor is someone who is known to have already visited the site. And the way we track this is with cookies, right? The small data files that websites put on your machines. So cookies establish user histories, but you can block cookies, you can delete cookies. So again, if a visitor has a cookie from your site, you know it's not their first time. If a visitor doesn't have a cookie, you assume it's their first time, but you don't really know for sure. Now, a visitor session, something different. The session is the time that a visitor stays on your site. And I will mention a little detail about that. So the definition of a session, we'll say, what is a session? Well, first of all, it's not exactly the same as a visit. How is that? Well, a session typically includes all visits happening within a half-hour window. Okay, so that means, for example, if you visit a site, shop around, temporarily lose connection because you're using a mobile device downtown, I don't know, okay? Then come back and shop some more, okay? That's all one session. even though it technically includes multiple visits. Okay, the idea is most people accomplish their website goals, right? Their web page, well, we'll go with site, website goals within half an hour. Okay, if you're shopping, yeah, you're probably going to shop for a little while. You'll be done within half an hour. Okay, if you come back later, if you come back an hour or two later, that's treated as probably something for some new goal. Okay, obviously, online gaming sites may be a significant exception. All right, so that's the idea of what a session is. So for example, if I visit a site at 8 in the morning and then I come back and visit at 8:15 in the morning, those two are going to be part of the same session. If I go at 8 in the morning and then I come back at 9 in the morning, two different sessions. Okay, so the half hour definition is used by Google Analytics and many other web analytics tools, but it's not an absolute universal standard. Okay, the half hour cutoff point for a session is kind of arbitrary, but that's the idea. It wants to capture the time in which people would typically achieve their shopping goals. Okay, so that's what a session is. Now, a visit, again, each time your site is visited, and users can view multiple pages during a session, and again, visits different from page hits. Page hits are each time a page gets loaded, each time a page gets seen. So if you're refreshing a page, for example, that's going to typically count as page hits. If you're traveling backwards through pages using navigation arrows, that's going to count as page hits. And one other note, one user, right, one actual person can visit the same site using multiple devices and thus appear to be different users, right? Because the cookies are going to be installed separately on the browsers. Likewise, you can also visit the same site using different browsers because cookies are generally cached separately for different browsers. Same thing. So if I look at a site once in Firefox and once in Microsoft Edge, that's probably going to be treated as two separate visits, even though it's one user using the same machine. It's two browsers. Okay. Channels. Channels are how the visitors got to your site. So the big ones, search engines, and there are two categories in there, organic, which is search that isn't paid for, and then paid search, right, where there are ads and you click on them and you get there. Other things, referrals from other sites, and there are different categories of referrals. So for example, different types of ads. And then the direct. Direct just means you there was no intermediate site. There was no site before you got to the website in question. So either you typed in a URL or you clicked on a link that you'd had it favorited. Okay, so how channels work. Number one, any visit to a site comes via exactly one channel. Okay, you always say this is the channel that the visitor got through. The basic flavors are this. There are ads and there are search engines and there are social media and there are nothing. Okay, so the ads, I'm going to just do this as a big square because we can carve it all up. Okay, so let's do the first one, the easy one. So search engines, Google, right? And in principle, you could say, well, there are other ones, but Google is definitely going to separate them. They're going to be clustered under other types of referral traffic. Again, with ads, same thing. Number one for Google, number two, others. Social media, right? variety of websites. So Facebook, Twitter, I guess YouTube, right? All those are social media sites. Boom. However, people are getting to you from there. Those are their different possibilities. Okay. And then nothing. If there's no known mechanism for the user getting to a site, there's one that's either, you know, all of that is direct. So it's all categorized together because the user doesn't know, the website doesn't know, but includes typing in the URL as well as clicking favorites and bookmarks, whatever you prefer to call them. Okay, so again, all of these, they don't overlap with each other, right? There is one mechanism through which you got to the site. That's what the channel is. And you could scramble these up in different ways, right? This is the way Google Analytics does it, but other web analytics tools might, mix up these in a different way. They might not be so Google-centric, for example, but still, these same basic flavors are going to be there, right? Ads, search engines, social, or nothing. All right, so Google, I'll make the mark here. This would be considered the paid channel. This would be considered the organic channel. Organic meaning you didn't pay for it. Okay, what am I doing here? Okay. So transactions, when somebody buys something on the website, the transaction is typically attributed to the immediately preceding source. So for example, if you see an ad and you click on the ad and you go to the website and buy something, then in all the web analytics records of how effective that ad is, it's going to show that that ad led to that purchase. However, in real life, the relationship between sources and purchases is not always terribly clear, right? Especially if you have a long window between when you've seen the ad and you come back eventually to buy it. There could be other intervening factors, right? So maybe not just ads, or maybe not just that one ad. You've been getting the email ads from the business like every day for the last month, and then finally you're out browsing around randomly, you see an ad for a product that you looked at a couple days before, you click on that, you go to buy something. Yeah, that's the mechanism that got you to the site, but all of this other advertising did have a role in you ultimately making the purchase. Okay, goals and conversions. So goals are something you want your visitors to do when they visit your site. So obviously purchasing products is a big one, but other stuff that could be reasonably observed to lead to purchases, things like file downloads or watching videos about the products or clicking on various links, like for more information, click on this, right? Any of those things that have a positive correlation with whatever you want to happen, like sales, those would be good things to include as goals. And a conversion is when that goal is reached. So the goal conversion rate is essentially what fraction of visits result in a particular goal being achieved. For example, if you have as a goal purchasing a product and 20% of the visitors to your site actually buy something, then the conversion rate for that goal is 20%. Funnels. Okay, a funnel is a sequence of steps that a visitor has to follow to reach a goal. Typically, they're going to be at least a couple basic ones. It's going to be looking at a product and then checking out. So the reason why you track funnels is to see where visitors leave the site. For example, visitor comes to the landing page of your site. So it sees an ad, comes to your site on a page called a landing page, typically specified for that ad. That links to a product or a set of product options. The visitor clicks on one of those, adds one or more products to the cart, hopefully eventually checks out. Okay, at any point in that sequence, the visitor could abandon the process. He could say, nope, I don't like any of these products, or I'm not buying anything today, or, oh, I don't have my credit card with me, or you're asking for an intrusive level of personal information that I don't want to give. The shipping costs are too high. At any point in the process, the visitor might abandon it. So in general, you're going to have a lot of visitors leaving early on. So for example, they read the product description, but they're not currently ready to buy. So they've read it, they looked at the product, but they're not ready to jump on it just yet. Other things, again, product price, shipping policies, maybe the visitor was hoping to get the product within the next couple days, but it turns out it's not currently in stock and they're going to have to wait 3 or 4 weeks. Or the site is poorly designed, right? Maybe it's supposed to get to the next page in the sequence, but the wheel spins around for like 5 or 10 seconds and the visitor says, oh, forget this, I'm going to go somewhere else. So funnels let you track basically what point in the process the visitors are leaving, and so let you recognize which points in the process you need to pay more attention to fixing. Okay, bounces. A bounce is when a visitor sees only one page of your site before leaving, typically the landing page following an ad. So what a bounce might indicate, number one, is that the site isn't what the user is looking for, right? You show the ad, you show the landing page, but nope, this isn't it, and then the visitor goes away. In some cases, it could be because the visitor found exactly what was needed, right? You go onto the website, and right there, as soon as the page loads, you see exactly what you need to see, and you're happy and you go away. This is something that fairly often happens on informational sites, not so much on retail sites. Another possibility is that the visitor left the site through some other link, right? Or they just typed in a new URL for that page. Now, bounces aren't always bad, but for retail sites, they generally are. You don't want people bouncing away without buying anything. But for other sites, for informational sites, for example, it's a little bit murky. Typical bounce rates are going to vary very widely by category. For example, for blogs, blog bounce rates are typically very high, like around the order of 80%. Big reason for that is people come to the blogs to see, is there something new here today? Or to read a particular article. So if they read the article, that's what there is, you know, they're done. If they see there's nothing else new, they're probably not going to stick around. So that can be tracked as a bounce away. On the other hand, right, if they go to the site and it has nothing new at all in the first place, yeah, they're probably not going to stick around to dig through the archives. So again, blogs tend to have a pretty high bounce rate. Even in the case where people go to the site and they intend to read something, they might just look at the title and say, oh, this isn't really something I'm interested in. Bye, see ya. Retail sites tend to have lower bounce rates. People will typically go to the site and look around a little bit if they took the trouble to go there. For example, they might go to the search feature, look up a product, go to a few pages for those products. Even if they don't buy anything, bounces are less common for retail sites. And if you want to reduce your bounce rates, the single best thing you can do is do a better job targeting your visitors. For example, if you have a blog, you might set up email notifications every time you have a new topic, right? Every time you have a new post, and then people see the email, and if they're interested, they'll go see. Okay. So we've talked a little bit about landing pages. What a landing page is, again, typically where visitors first meet your site. I suppose I should be ending soon. It's going to be running a little bit over. So I do this slide, then I'll call it a day. So landing page is where visitors first meet your site. Typically, visitors arriving from online ads or email ads or that sort of thing. Older usage for landing page could include a site's main page, but these days when we talk about landing pages, we do mostly mean a page that's specifically crafted as a response to a particular ad. So you click on the ad and then you get delivered to this customized landing page for that ad. Landing pages are very important because they're that little brief window where you have the visitor's interest. They were interested enough in the ad to click on it and go to your site, so try to sell them something. So good practices, number one, craft the ad with a specific goal in mind. So Pizza Hut, for example, once you sign up to get emails from them, they'll start sending you all kinds of ads about whatever discounts they have going on that day. And so if it's, you know, like a buy one, get one, something like that, that'll be in the ad, and you can go to the ad and, you know, click on it and go to Pizza Hut, and it should bring you right to a place where you say, hey, pick the 2 pizzas you want to get, right? That makes it easier for the customers. So limit the landing page to that particular goal, either buying a product, getting visitor contact information. Another case, for example, if you go to get some work done on your house, for example, you want to set up a service to, I don't know, you got something that needs to be fixed, right? You got a plumbing problem. Well, most of the websites, they'll have some customer, you know, feedback there. You can go straight to the website and enter in your problem, and then they'll get back to you pretty quickly. So again, landing page for that particular goal, right? That ad, if they send you out an ad, hey, we're Joe the plumber, we're just sending out a bunch of emails to everybody in this zip code. If you need some stuff, please contact us. So people that check that stuff, yeah, they'll get a customized landing page. They'll say, please enter your problem, when you're available to discuss it, that sort of thing. Anyway, and then after you're done with the landing page, you've designed it, you've gotten some traffic, you can include that as part of your web analytics process to assess how effective your end-to-end process is, from the start, from where you send out the ad in the first place, to the end when the customer hopefully buys your product. Okay. This seems like a good break point. I know we have a lot of slides left, but we'll get them done. So I'm going to stop the sharing, and I am going to stop the recording.